Hello everyone, and welcome to the next edition of the Holland Land Office Museum's Artifact video series. My name is Ryan Duffy, and I'm the director of the museum. And this week we are going to talk about one of the most seminal items to the museum here, and something that anyone who's been here will recognize, and even those who haven't and just passed by will recognize, and that is our 19th century military cannons that sit out on the front portico of the museum. Now I'm standing in our military wing as I felt it was only appropriate to start the video by standing in front of the munitions that these cannons would fire off, and those are the cannonballs behind me. Our cannons date back to the early parts of the 19th century and were used as part of the New York State Militia. Now, we do not have the full backstory on these guns and in their entire history of where they came from, but we can trace it back quite a ways, both before it came to Batavia and since it's been here. But what we are sure of is that these guns have been on the front stoop of the museum almost since the very beginning, if not from the very beginning. We have photographs and other images going back as far as 1905 with the guns out in front of the museum. So they've been really a part of the museum since its inception, and are one of the key elements of the image of the Holland Land Office Museum. Now I'm going to show you some pieces of the guns and talk a little bit more about their history and where they came from and sort of the process that went into them. So just follow along with me as we kind of go through the history of the Holland Land Office cannons. Now, both of the guns that we have here were actually made by the Bellinis Foundry down in Richmond, Virginia, between the 1820s and 1830s. The first one that we're showing here was actually made in 1836, the barrel was. Now, the Bellinis Foundry was one of the most well-known foundries in the country and made guns for quite a few decades during the 19th century and up through the Civil War. But these ones were made around 1836. That's the markings on this one. And it even has markings on the barrel of LWR that you'll see here, which were the early markings of the foundry before it changed its name to Bologna. And this one also has markings of the U.S., so it might have been pushed into federal service, but we know that they were used by the New York State Militia, at least they were in their possession, and were possibly even stored in the old arsenal here in Batavia that was torn down in 1870. But after that, it seems that they have made their way around and possibly to the Baker Gun Works here in Batavia before ending up at the museum at the turn of the 20th century. Now here we have the second of the two guns, and it's actually the older of the two, as the markings on the barrel indicate that it was founded at Bologna in 1822. Now other markings on it show that it was pressed into service for New York State in 1834. And just like its compatriot on the other side, it was used exclusively for the New York State Militia and probably never saw any battlefield action, though there is a chance that it might have been pressed into emergency service during the height of the Civil War, but still never actually fired in battle. Now, when looking at the cannons, the structure of the carriage indicates sort of the time period that we were focusing on. Now, each of the carriages has a single trail, which is the one long post trailing behind. Now this would be in reference to sort of a later period and when the cannons were, we'll say, in use, more likely the 1850s and beyond. Now these guns were made before that, so originally the carriage would have had a double trail, but since these guns were in use well after the Civil War, a single trail is still period accurate and would have been used with these guns. Now, last year we actually sent the guns off to be restored to a company called Seed Artillery in Altoona, Pennsylvania, and they did quite a lot of work with the guns and basically cleaned up the barrels and repainted them to make them look as period piece as possible, and they also rebuilt the entire carriages to make them period authentic. So they are freshly restored and look as nice as they ever have, so we're very thankful that we were able to complete that project, and thanks Seed Artillery for the work that they did on it. Well, I hope you liked this edition of our Artifact video series. That's a very special one to us, and one I've been really waiting to do now that the weather has broken. So in case you've missed any in the past, please check out our YouTube channel, Holland Land Office Museum, and you can check out all the previous ones, as we're up to near 50 of these in this series already. And stick around, as we'll keep doing these every week, and hopefully you'll enjoy them. And as always, come by the museum and check out all these things in person, especially the cannons now that they are freshly unwrapped from the winter and spring season, and ready to greet everyone as they pass down Main Street here in Batavia.